Yes, of course, because all the trash is basically the result from human activity, right? Because it's human beings who use those things, and then eventually they become trash when the objects become not useful anymore. Then they become trash. Even the fact of even the action of throwing those items away, whereby they become trash, is also associated with human activity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would consider trash to be artifacts as well, lah. Because the the reason why they become trash is because of human activity.
Human, right? Except it's not glamorous as other active artifacts, smelly and stuff like that. Anyway.
Yeah, but
True.
going by the definition, lah, the broad definition
Yeah.
of what an artifact is, then we can consider trash to be artifacts as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Even like human feces is also considered an artifact, right?
Of course, yes, because it's associated with human beings or the activity of humans. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, the next question I will address to Wafa, Miss Wafa. So it says here in the bio that your favorite object is jar and tajau. So we would like to ask him what exactly is these things, especially tajau. Like we've never really heard the name before, and what significance does this artifact play that it managed to be your favorite?
Well, okay, Tajau is actually not originated from Borneo. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually it's brought by the traders and the merchant from China. So that's how Tajau came to Borneo, or specifically to Sarawak. And it play a lot of role in the ethnic community, and not only Sarawak, and even in Sabah. And my favorite especially is the burial part of the tajau. I mean, tajau can be used in many other function, right? One of it is to actually to store rice, which many of the community did. Nowadays, they still use taja to store their rice with their harvest. And I know in Sabah, they use like tajau to store the tuak, the drink. And for me, I'm interested in tajau being used as to store the human bones as a secondary burial. Yeah. So basically that is tajau. Yeah.
Like, what is the process of the burial? You know, when once a person dies, so they will take their bones and store it inside the tajau.
Yeah. So this is a secondary burial. So meaning that it's the second process after human bone being stored in the coffin for quite some time.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
usually this. Yeah.
Probably useful to say which group in Sarawak are practicing or used to practice the secondary burial, no? In Borneo.
I think, in my opinion, I think is the Kenyah, Kayan, Kajang, Sekapan. So these are some of the example that I've read in some of the blog, and hopefully it's reliable. And yeah, these are some of the group that practice this secondary burial, especially in Sarawak. And yeah, so and usually those practice this secondary burial is those coming from a rich family or aristocrat. It's not for people, because it's require a lot of cost. I mean, when I say cost, does not necessarily mean money. It could be using a lot of animal to sacrifice. So yeah, those type of people, they can afford to have that secondary burial. So yeah.
And then in terms of cost as well, when you think about the use of tajau for the practice of secondary burial, tajau itself is a very valuable item. So not everybody can have the tajau. So the tajau is something that you have to bring all the way from the coast all the way into the interior area. So it's a very rare kind of item. So not everybody will be able to obtain a tajau. So the tajau then becomes something very valuable. That's why it's associated with aristocrats or the upper elites in the society lah. So for people to be able to be buried in a tajau, so that reflects their social status in society.
So basically what you're saying is that the cultural significance of a tajau is basically to show one's status in a society. Or
yes.
Does it have
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of an artifact lah, because we are talking about artifacts, right? Wafa just now mentioned when it comes to the tajau, it has a lot of practical uses for storing rice, for storing tuak, but at the same time, besides the functional use of artifacts, you also have ritual use, some other symbolic use. So that is basically related to the social significance of an artifact.
Okay. So the next question will be addressed to Sir Nicholas. So basically, we know that he takes a particular interest with megaliths. So I think like the most famous megalith is Stonehenge. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
So I feel like the audience would like to know what exactly is the function of megalith to the past society, and what is the significance of these monuments actually.
Okay, that one is a very complicated question also lah. The reason why is because you find megaliths everywhere in the world, and in different places in the world you have different uses of megaliths. Okay, but the most common use for a megalith is, number one, is for commemorative purposes. So it's to memperingati lah, so it becomes a monument. That's why people make megalith, because it's very big, it's very obvious, and then it shows the power of certain leaders in terms of getting a huge number of people to build the megalith, the power and the influence, and also maybe wealth as well. And then so it's basically to commemorate something lah. It's either to commemorate some important people or some important events. And then also megaliths, also because they are so obvious in the landscape, they also become gathering places, like for people when they want to hold some kind of ritual or ceremony, they would hold it at megalithic sites. In fact, you mentioned Stonehenge just now. So it's also currently not just a place for people to gather in the past, but also in the present as well. So I'm sure you have seen maybe videos or in the news of people gathering at Stonehenge during the summer season. So it's part of some kind of a new ritual. And then of course, the other function of megalithic monuments is of course as burial sites. So quite similar to the megalithic monuments in Sarawak. Like in many places in the world also, you find people building burial places from stones, and then they later become megalithic monuments.
Yeah, I think I also there's in Peninsula the megalithic will be in Negeri Sembilan.
Yes, and Melaka.
Sorry?
Negeri Sembilan and Melaka.
Yeah, Negeri Sembilan and Melaka. And I remember because this megalith in Negeri Sembilan, it's just sometimes it's beside the road. So whenever you pass by, you can see this megalith, and it's very tall. And whenever I pass by that, I always care because I know there's some spirit there. I don't know.
Yeah. that one is actually one of the more interesting things about megalithic monuments, which is also something that I cover in my research as well. Megalithic monuments are not just important in the past, but also in the present, because people will have a lot of stories about the megalith. They will say that the megalith is a batu hidup or something, that every year the stone will grow bigger, and then sometimes you find
it's alive.
yeah, and then sometimes you find a lot of stories about hantu lah, spirits in the stone, and those kind of things. So basically, those are the things that are happening right now in the present. So it really shows that magnetic monuments or whatever artifacts that we can think of, they also have a lot of significance in the present day as well. So they are not just important as archaeological objects. They are not just important in terms of telling us about how people lived in the past, but they're also very important to our lives in the present as well.
Correct. Agree.
Yeah, I think it is very interesting, when we talk about artifacts, megalith or even pots, sometimes because they are associated with burial sites. So we will always, feel a bit intimidated because we know there are spirits somewhere near the artifacts.
Yeah.
Well, talking about this paranormal or like spiritual connections, with artifacts. How I feel like in the past society, they are actually very heavily cultured. They believe in nature. They are very strongly tied to nature, stones and trees. So comparing with the current society today, we can see how we are actually more out of touch with nature. We are more uh, more of a like a digitalized generation. So do you feel like this evolution or like these changes in society affects us as a society? How maybe we lose a bit of our culture, especially in the Asian community.
I'm sure that's definitely like
Yep.
imagine that, like, because in the past we used to have all the documentations and scripts, right, written in the stones and everything. But imagine now we're in a digitalization world where everything you just like type in your computer, you key in the cloud, right? So imagine in 1,000 years after this, people, instead of a stone, a monument carved in a stone, they just discovered like a metallic piece of laptop which is unusable anymore. So if like the monument is carved in a stone, we are able to dissect the readings, and we are able to understand what was happened during that time. But imagine it's a piece of junk metal, a computer that it's not functioning anymore in 1,000 years from now. So imagine that how different it's gonna be for archaeology and artifacts in the future lah. I'm going to say that. So that's my part of my opinion lah. I think there's more to add on.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you say just now, like, people does not really like far detached from those kind of belief, like spirit. But to be honest, in my opinion, there are some people who still believe in that, and they even use it in the modern world. I mean, it's part of the belief, especially like in Malay community. Even though you see them, they use technology, but in their belief system, they still have that kind of like belief to the spirit, and they still, meet dukun or bomo to help them in their everyday life. It's still happening. It's just that in the public. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. Understand.
I think so too lah.
Okay. Okay. So basically, this next question will be addressed to our third speaker, Chua Iwei. So we've been informed that she is interested in Japanese artifacts like samurai sword. So basically, just a general question. So basically, how do you think these Japanese artifacts affect the Japanese culture now?
Okay, one thing I can say that as we can see in a very big difference of Japanese artifacts and Malaysian artifacts is that usually in our archaeology we study about it in a very serious matter. Like we watch documentations, we read all the articles or the researches about all these artifacts, right? Then we have a very detailed records of it. But in Japanese, they have a very interesting culture is that they personification it, means like, let's say a sword is an artifact, so they will create a character for that particular sword for him to become like a very handsome boy or something, to be appeared in animations, in dramas, in songs, so that this part of the artifact part of their culture in their history is actually very integrated into their daily life in the sense of entertainment. So for example, like they usually learn history from you can learn a lot of their history and artifacts, like what is the name of the artifacts, what is their name, through all this media, like the movies, animation. So I would say it's very different culture from us, and that's quite interesting, like how we can relate past and present in a different country lah. That's for my opinion, as far as I can observe.
I see.
Yeah,
So I
can
feel
I say
like
something?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't think that what you observe in Japanese culture is necessarily different from what we ourselves do as well, because in terms of like giving names to objects and then treating them like persons, I mean those are the things that we do as well, right? I mean like me, for example, I have a guitar at home. So one of the things that I do is I play guitar. So I give names to my guitars. Yeah.
But what
And then
one very interesting phenomena about Japanese culture is that they romanticize it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we do too. Like you would have like a doll or something, and then you would treat the doll like your anak or something, you know. You will give it names and then here or hello baby or whatever. So we might do it in a different way, but in terms of that engagement with an object, we do find it happening everywhere as well lah. But probably the Japanese way of doing it is a little bit different lah. So that one is very
True.
unique to Japanese culture. So like you were comparing Japanese culture and then how archaeologists treat objects. Of course, they will be different also lah. We can consider archaeology to be its own particular culture as well. So like how archaeologists think would be different, how archaeologists, the perception towards objects will also be different. So in terms of what they will do to the objects will also be different. So it's all a reflection of the culture or the background that we are used to lah, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because because we also I think romanticize some of, I'm not sure if it's an artifact, like for example Gunung Santubong, you know, we have stories related to a specific place, stories related to a specific thing. So I feel like in a way every culture have their own way in explaining a certain artifact or a certain occurrence in the past.
Yes.
So they relate
So
the past with like some stories to the present and pass it down to the future.
yeah,
Yes.
just
And then how we relate to the past is always through objects. So that is the importance of artifacts lah. Like how we understand the world is always reflected in our relationship with objects, with artifacts. So that's why artifacts are very interesting lah, in my opinion, as an anthropologist or archaeologist.
Okay, so talking about the importance of artifacts, right? So now we are moving forward to the future. Let's we are moving forward to like the future part. So let's say right now in the current society, you know, we have very we have the worldwide internet, for example. So all data is stored inside, including, for example, videos, you know, cat videos, memes, even quizzes, or even this recorded Zoom session. So it is all recorded and stored in cloud. So do you think in maybe 1,000 years from now, will all these things be considered an artifact, like this data stored in the cloud?
I think so. Yes. Sorry for volunteering to answer. I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned the cloud. In the future, the cloud itself will become an archaeological site.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't think about it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is very interesting how you know, these are abstract things that we can't see. So from this, what do you think will happen to the future of archaeology? You know, will there still be like physical excavation since everything is, you know, probably digitalized?
Uh, I I would imagine so. Yes, because I don't think like all the places in the world will have already been excavated in the future. I think there will always be places where people will still be able to conduct physical excavation. But the future is interesting in the sense that it provides a new possibility for doing archaeology lah. Because we mentioned the cloud just now, right?
Yeah.
Also, as you all probably know, the definition of an archaeological site is basically a place where you find evidence of human activity of the past,
Mm.
right? So basically, the cloud will become that in the future lah. So in the future, you have all the records of human activity, like all the evidence, all the videos, all the photos, the documents. So the cloud, according to that definition, will then become a new sort of archaeological site lah. But even when you have that happening, I would still imagine that there would still be places in the world where people would still be conducting physical archaeological excavation, but they can substantiate their findings by using data obtained from the cloud as well lah.
Mm, I see.
So like a new source of information or data.
Mm, yeah. So
Yeah.
just to come back to like a basic question, how long actually does it take for something to be considered an artifact?
That's a good
The
question.
time doesn't really matter actually.
Mm.
The time doesn't really matter. Even something made just half an hour ago can also be considered an artifact, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the time doesn't really matter. It's
Oh,
it's it's the association with human activity that makes it an artifact.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter
oh,
The
whether thousands of
timeline or
years or
whatever.
hundreds of
Yeah.
years or like even yesterday.
oh, yeah. Because I feel like me myself and also the audience, we never really associate with something. For example, like our grandmother's clothes, we won't really call it an artifact. But going through you know, the general definition of artifact itself, I think yes, it can be considered an artifact. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's why lah, because the first question just now, right? I was talking about the general meaning of an artifact. So actually, artifact has a general meaning. It is not just an archaeological term, you know.
Mm, yeah.
But we often take it for granted because we often hear artifacts being used in the context of archaeology. That and then also we don't really use the word artifact in our daily life. So somehow we lose that meaning lah. Tapi in a general way, artifacts are also they have general meanings as well lah.
I see. Okay. So since we've already like talked about the past, the present, and future of artifacts and archaeology, I think it is time for us to take a break and give the audience in Instagram and Facebook Live a chance to give their questions. So we will meet together in the next Zoom session.
All right.
All
See
right.
you.
See you.
See you soon.
There.
See you there.
Right.
Okay, so for the audience in Instagram and Facebook Live, so this is the time for